Welcome to Prospecting Pros. I'm your host, John Carsant, and in each episode, we're going to be interviewing sales and revenue leaders to learn more about their path to success and what they're seeing in the market today. My goal is to plant seeds and give you new ideas on how to think differently about sales development. Hopefully, our conversations will help you break through the noise and improve your results. So, let's get into this week's episode. Welcome to episode 3. We have James as our guest. Welcome, James.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah. You and I met, I think, when you were back at Phone Burner. You were prospecting. I think you were doing a damn good job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Some people don't think so.
No, I remember you did a very good job, and you were one of the people I wanted to have on. But why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. My background is in sales. I've been doing sales forever. And then about, like a year ago, give or take, I got advice from the legendary 𝐸𝐵𝐿, which is pretty cool. And he told me to switch careers. And so I took the advice, switched careers, and now I'm a salesperson turned marketer.
Let's dive, tell us a little bit more. Dive deeper into, give us the details of that. How'd you make that transition? And when we first met, you were at Phone Burner. I think you were SDR AE. Tell us how you transitioned and your experience to where you got to today.
Yeah, dude, Phone Burner was such an awesome job. It was probably the coolest job I've ever had. And I was managing a whole team over there. The thing is, I had a quota too, and it was a really big quota. So as a team every month, it was like 75 or 70 meetings or something we had to hit, and half of those were coming from me. That was my quota. So it was like
nice,
really hardcore prospecting, man, like exhausting. But it was good. Like it was a good job, good money, all that stuff too. And over the years, like I had listened to a bunch of sales influencers and marketing influencers and whatnot. And when is it okay if I curse in the show or
Sure.
Okay, cool. I just want to preface it because I just let things slip out. But I came across Seth Godin and I was like, man, this is my jam. I was like, I absolutely love this dude. And I'm going through my prospects one day and I'm like, I wonder if I go through my data provider, if he's in there. And lo and behold, I found a cell phone number. And he literally picked up on the second call or the second ring. It was like, hello? I was like, I had no idea you're gonna pick up, and I'm like freaking out over the phone like a total nerd. And he's he didn't call me dude, but he said, hey, just relax, kid. Ask me a question, and then I gotta get out of the Uber and go back home. And I'm like, how do I level up my career? I'm this big outbound sales guy. I cold call all the time. And we talked for a few minutes, but his long story short, the main thing that I remember from that was he said, you need to find a way for your prospects to chase after you instead of you chasing after your prospects. And that just hit me like a truck. And so after that day, and I was still a Phone Burner at the time, I started posting on LinkedIn every day and Twitter too. And the traffic I was getting from there, the leads I was getting, not only were they like more frequent, like I would wake up with inbounds on my Calendly, but they were way better too. And they would close a lot faster than the outbound leads. And I'm like, why the fuck would I ever spend all of my time and effort doing outbound when everything is coming inbound? It's like smoother and better. It's like I shit on outbound a lot on my LinkedIn. But the truth, like, it still works really fine. I just love getting people to come to me. I think that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, one thing we've found too is, anybody that comes inbound, especially from referrals, and we're getting more of those just as an agency ourselves, obviously, easy. You're just an order taker at that point. But one thing we see is that the more outbound we do, it starts ramping up that inbound cycle too, because more people that we work with that come from outbound, we prove out success, they refer us out, and then that inbound engine starts spinning up even faster.
Yeah, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Vice versa too. Like if you're able to crack down a really good content strategy, it makes outbound so much easier. There were so many people who I called on the phone using the same opener that I always use and I talk about on my LinkedIn. They're like, wait, you're the guy on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, I see your stuff all the time. I love your stuff. It was like the coolest feeling to have that happen. But there were at least like a dozen or two instances where that happened. Mm-hmm. So to your point, yeah, having it go both ways is great.
Something I'm curious about, because we did use Phone Burner briefly, and we use Orem. That's our tool. It works for us. How do you see the differences between those type of tools, between a Phone Burner, Orem, and a 𝐸𝐿𝐿?
It depends on what your use case is. I'll tell you what I think the problem is with parallel dialers. And I don't have a dialer anymore. If I do cold call, which is like occasionally, I'll do it right off my cell phone. But the beautiful part about most power dialers is a lot of them work with really legitimate phone carriers. So you don't show up as spam, which is cool. The problem with power dialers is a lot of them buy their numbers off of like Twilio or some third party like that. Mm-hmm. So it's like, do you get to call 10 times more people? Of course you do. But what's the difference if no one's picking up? You're literally like breaking even and you're spending 3 times more money. So Orm's been really good with that. People over there have really high pickup rates compared to what most parallel dialers have. Nooks, I haven't heard as many good things about Nooks, to be honest with you. Like, just being in the space for a while. Orm is probably one of the toughest competitors to go up against. Like, they're all good or whatever. Honestly, like, whatever you're using, the big problem is, like, a lot of people just yeet cold calls out hoping something sticks. And they sound like, if you ever played a video game before, an NPC is like the characters in the background who, like, you can't play as them. And you basically look like another NPC calling people.
Yeah.
Right? And no one's going to take you seriously if you do that. That's a hard part about prospecting over the phone. If you're just eating out those cold calls, it's like, it's hard to get them to stick.
I remember when we were evaluating Phone Burner, and part of the pitch was that there was higher quality. Like, they had higher quality phone numbers, and then there was better connect rates. And ultimately, unfortunately, the reason why we didn't go with them was because their reporting wasn't what we needed. We have to ultimately, it's not like we're just doing the calls for ourselves, we're doing them on behalf of our clients. So we need to report back. And they just didn't quite have the reporting functionality. But other than that, I remember it was good, it was solid. Maybe we revisit that if they've improved their reporting capabilities for an agency, that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good ones. Like FrontSpin is really good too.
I heard about them,
yeah. There's a lot of good ones.
Yeah, one I keep seeing pop up too is that 𝐾𝐶 as well.
Yeah, 𝐾𝐶's a lot like Nooks or Orm. Right, like a lot of those are very equivalent, but they're whatever works. Everybody has a different use case. There are people who love 𝐾𝐶, and I might be scratching my head like I don't see why. But there's like specific use cases where it works. And it depends too. If you're calling it enterprise accounts, you do not want a parallel dialer. If you're calling it SMBs, it's totally more applicable. Especially if you're calling like businesses. Like there's a lot of use cases for it.
Okay, but going back to you, and so you're at Phone Burner. You were there for, I don't know how long you were there for, but I know you were doing an awesome job there. But I remember you transitioned, you started your own outbound agency and then quickly pivoted to, how would you define your agency today? What is that? Social selling?
Yeah, so I dumped the outbound agency pretty quickly. I was like, man, fuck this. I was like, this is just, if I keep doing this forever, I'm competing against people who are charging so little. There are companies in India or wherever with lead gen agencies charging $75 per lead or something like that. But I ended up pivoting to this. And this is a ghostwriting content marketing agency. The big thing that we do is we help challenger brands compete against the big boys. So like anybody who, like you ever hear the story of David and Goliath, we work with the Davids. How
are you pitching these companies today, the effectiveness of the type of work you're doing on social? Because LinkedIn's a big one, Twitter's a big one. It depends on, I guess, the platforms. But I think LinkedIn still works, but it's certainly gotten more challenging. And I know you have very creative ways of putting out the content to be more like eye-catching. Walk me through, like, how are you getting around those objections, and walk us through some of your like success stories, like some of your current clients and what they're seeing.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different directions to go with this, but the main thing is if you look at LinkedIn, they changed their algorithm a few months ago, or probably 2 years ago now. And everybody used to get reach really easily, including me. Like my reach used to be ridiculous. And then out of nowhere, it dropped really hard for like everybody. You used to get 10,000 impressions, you're getting 1,000 now, right? So that's been really frustrating. A lot of people like completely gave up on LinkedIn altogether. When there are specific accounts that I want to win, some things that I'm looking for, have they tried LinkedIn in the past? Or maybe they haven't tried LinkedIn, but they're like, they would kill it on LinkedIn because they have a cool product, it's a challenger brand, all that good stuff too. And one of the pieces, somebody I was just on a call the other day too, like this aspiring ghostwriter who's about to get fired from his job was like, about to get fired, I need help, I want to start a ghostwriting agency, what do I do? And I was like, the first thing you do is you do free work for people. Nobody likes to hear this, but if you do free work for the first like month or two, you get so many people, especially accounts that you want to win, that say yes to that free trial. And from free to paid, the conversion is really high if you do a good job. That's been the biggest thing for me, is like doing free work. It's exhausting to do it, but like, especially when you have 5 free customers, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the way you got to do it. To like, just think about it. I don't want to say no name, but you're basically just starting out your company. When I started Level Up Leads, I was only doing list building, and I had a similar offer. Is I would get people in the front door and be like, look, I'm going to give me your ICP. I'll give your first 50 leads for free. Sample list for free. And it got, not everyone converted. There was a few people that dropped off, but like a lot of them did. My response rates were really high because you're offering free work and it's a great lead magnet. And I think this is a similar case. It's, if you can go in and show the work and they can sample it with
really no strings attached. Oh yeah, actually this is pretty good. Oh yeah, it led to an inbound, or it led to, or whatever. I was able to connect with somebody I hadn't been able to get through to. And I think just no matter the business, if you can have that offer, you're gonna jumpstart, just build up your pipeline so much faster.
Yeah, you also get really good testimonials too.
That's the biggest thing is really building up that social proof, because that's what most people want to see. Have you done this before? Have you done it with people similar to us? Because it reduces that risk, or that mental barrier that they have to actually shelling out a few grand to working with nobody, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which is like everybody's a nobody.
Yeah.
There's so many agencies just like waiting around for leads to come through the door. And it's crazy because like you could pick 5 companies, really good companies, and you could say, I'll do free work for you. I'm going to give you a full thing, things that I want in return. If you love our work, maybe we can renew. If you liked our work but you didn't love it enough to renew, a couple intros would be great, and then some kind of testimonial. Are you cool with that? And they almost always say yes to that. It's easy money. It's literally the easiest money.
That's one thing that we've started emphasizing just this last year heavily is case studies, referrals, starting doing video content with clients as well, just because that exponentially increases conversions across the board. If you have that stuff you can just send out to people.
Exactly. Like the thing I was talking about before too, like the NPC rule. You need to ask yourself, do I look like an NPC? You have to be really honest with each other. And if you're like, I don't know, then ask yourself, do other people see you that way? And if that's the case, you need to fix your shit, because no one's going to take you seriously. Anyway, it's a very long answer, but testimonials, dude, like all that stuff early on is so essential. And people don't want to work for it. They just wait around for leads to come in. And then when it doesn't happen, you see it all the time. People with green banners say, fuck it, I'm going to start a business. And then 2 months later, they get some dead-end job again.
I don't have the exact stats, but isn't it like 90 something percent of startups fail? It's just like, it's hard to get, you're likely not starting something that no one else is doing, right? So you're likely already have competitors and you're just playing catch up from there. Yeah. So it's challenging. I'm curious though, back to the LinkedIn part. How do you, let's say you have somebody, you have a target account, they look good, maybe they do the free work, or maybe it's paid to start. What do you do if someone doesn't quite have the network? Because a lot of it, you have to have more connections for it to really get more reach. How do you get around that? Or do you try to find another profile within the company to do? How does that work?
So like working with somebody who's basically going from 0 to 1.
Yeah, like they don't quite, they have like less than 500 connections, but they may be the right person, right? Maybe they're senior level at that company.
So this is the part that's not so sexy. And a couple people will probably listen to this and say, man, fuck James. I'm never going to work with him. But like when you are working with someone who's trying to go from 0 to 1, the problem is they're going to say to you like, dude, what the fuck? I've been working with you for a month. I see 0 results. I have someone like that who I'm working with right now. And if we're being real, it's the only client I have who's having virtually no results. So I said, you know what, man, you were with me for 1 month. Usually I would just drop off at this point because we're on like a 1 month basis, but we're going to keep this going until this works. Here are things that you could do. And this is a part where a lot of people are going to turn this podcast off. But one thing you can do, because it does work, whether people like it or not, engagement pods. I was just brought in. So someone I know is building a tool to analyze LinkedIn posts to see what's working and not working. It's able to detect whether or not you're using pods. The people who are using pods it's not all artificial. A lot of the reach they get, 90% plus, is organic. And as much as I hate cheating the game, engagement pods is kind of part of the game. This one client, I don't do this with my other clients. We agreed to put them on pods. And now every post is doing really well, which is unfortunate. It's cringe, but that's how it works.
Yeah, so would that work? Say you have a big organization of 1,000 employees and the CEO wants to start getting more impressions on LinkedIn. Would it work within the same organization? Or does it need to be several different organizations working collaboratively together to boost?
So it's less about organizations. It's more about the individual people. Mm-hmm. And I'll spill the beans on this too, because I've met with influencers before. I'm not going to name drop them, but I've met with influencers before who are part of these engagement pods. And they charge like anywhere between $300 a month to $3,000 a month in some cases.
Can you send us those pods?
I'll
pay it. I'll pay it. Send it to us.
But they spend all this money for being an engagement pod. And they have these big name influencers engage with it. But then it works. Right. So I got sidetracked there. What was the question?
If it's the same organization with the relatively same makeup of like connections and within their network, or does it need to be people that are outside of the organization, like with different networks?
If you have my kids are losing it. If you have several founders, like several legitimate founders, like VPs who are really active on LinkedIn, engaging with your stuff, everybody's going to see it, right? Problem with SDR land, a lot of small-time SDRs engage with each other's stuff, which is why it's hard to like post about SDR stuff if you're new into that area, right? So like when you have legitimate big accounts engaging with your stuff and reposting it, it's the easiest way for it to grow. Like the other day I wrote a post for a really big account. He has like just under 200,000 followers. He's like, dude, my account is like dead. Yeah, it's huge. And he's like, dude, I'm getting like no reach. He's not a client. He was like, what do I do? And I was like, let me just write a post for you. So I wrote a post for him, gave it to him, and it blew up, which I was super stoked about. He was like, why did this blow up? And I was like, I just wrote it differently. And if we look at somebody else's post, it'll have the same amount of likes. It'll probably have more engagement, but it'll have only like 15,000 followers to it. But then you see 47 retweets. That's a sign of an engagement bot right there, right? Like all these auto retweets. It's good for the LinkedIn algorithm, and LinkedIn just doesn't care enough to even take action against it. So it really is cringy, but it's part of the game right now.
I took Scott Leese's advice a while ago, and his advice was, if you don't have the network, then your posts aren't going to really go anywhere. This is a few years ago, which I took to heart, and I was like, yeah, that's right. I got to grow my network. So when I do want to post more consistently, it actually gets reach. So I don't know how true that is today, but I definitely have followed that. But so let's say you're taking on a client who doesn't have the followers or connections. Are you saying that it's more about the engagement at this point in that particular post rather than how built out that profile is in their network?
This episode is sponsored by Level Up Leads, a B2B sales development and appointment setting agency. Companies always need pipeline, but they oftentimes don't want to hire SDRs internally. The whole process is risky and expensive. You've got hiring costs, onboarding, training, additional spend on your tech stack, a few months to ramp up. And with that being said, SDRs are a high turnover position, and the person you hire might not necessarily work out, so you need to start all over again. That's why companies outsource this. Level Up Leads allocates a team of people, their tech stack, so you can onboard and launch your campaigns in about a week. They set qualified meetings in your calendar so your team has more selling opportunities. Visit levelupleads.io today to learn more. All right, now back to the show.
So yes and no. So yes, it's about getting the quick engagement to trick the algorithm. The other part of it is having the community. And a lot of people get that very confused. They think to themselves, okay, in order for me to have the community, I need to blast out LinkedIn requests, right? And that way I have a lot of people following me. They're going to see my stuff. Maybe that helps your content. But what's going to happen is it's not going to show up in their feed. That's a problem in itself. So then the next better advice is to engage with lots of people's content, right? Go on LinkedIn and for 15 to 30 minutes every day, engage with content like crazy. That works too, but it doesn't work amazingly because a lot of it is disingenuous. And the advice that I give people is like actually create community, like true community. So like for me, it's like I have separate groups. I have groups offline on LinkedIn. Like I have a Discord group.
I think I'm actually in there. I haven't checked it in a long time though. I think I turned it off. But yeah,
well, right. But yeah, like there's a Discord. I have a lot of people follow me on Twitter who I talk to, and that supports my LinkedIn. Like I don't have to share my shit in there or anything. It's in there because that's my community. So those people will see my stuff and easily engage with it. But it's about having actual connections that will engage with your stuff that you talk to on LinkedIn. Scott's a really good example because Scott has people who like really look up to him, including you, including me. So people engage with his content because they respect him so much. He only does that because he will text you offline, off LinkedIn. He'll text you, he'll call you. He's a good dude. Not everybody's like that, but growing on LinkedIn, so much of it is about building those friendships and relationships and community. And like a lot of people just think, how can I cheat the game? That only gets you so far.
He's been great, actually. Anytime I've ever written him anything DM wise or whatever, I was in his Patreon for a while. He's always responded. You can only imagine how many DMs he has.
Oh, he's loaded every day. I'm sure he gets just pounded away with DM after DM.
So here's a question for you. You're considered an expert on the LinkedIn side of things. And what are you doing outside of that, outside of social, to get interested leads, like, or have new meetings in your calendar? Are you doing any calling, texting, custom emails? Like, what else are you doing to get your foot in the front door?
I'm going to be super real with you. Like when I say that, because you've seen my post before where I'm like, cold calling is dead. Cold email is dead. These things are obviously not dead. The problem with socials is you have to be very black and white. You can't be like very in between in gray area. Otherwise it doesn't work. When there's an account that I want to go into, I might cold call, I might cold email that account. My biggest thing is like, how can I find an opening in this account? Is it going to be through a referral? Is it going to be through a cold call? Is it going to be through maybe a lower decision maker in the company? Maybe I should get intel from an SDR at the company who could tell me like who I need to talk to, how I need to get a hold of them, that kind of stuff. And I don't focus on lead lists like 5,000 people. Otherwise, I'm just wasting my time. I literally look at like maybe 50 accounts max at a time, and I just really zero into them. And there's a really awesome outbound guy on LinkedIn who nobody talks about. He used to work with the Apex revenue team, which is now 𝐼𝐸𝐼𝐸𝐼, right? His name is 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞. I hope I'm saying his last name right. But he's got a story where there was an account he was trying to get a hold of, or some person he was trying to get a hold of or something. And so he started calling all the local pizza places near that prospect. Ordered a pizza, sent it to the office. When they opened the pizza, there was a note inside of the pizza box that said, "Hey, it's 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, call me." Or something like that. That's the kind of stuff that I like to do in order to get my prospects' attention. I don't send pizzas or donuts and stuff like that, but I'll reach out to those people very individually. And same deal with you. I made you the graphic when we got on that call, remember? And you were looking like, what the fuck is this? But I do that with a lot of people. I'll make them some weird-ass Photoshop, and I'll send it to them. And so, like, all that kind of stuff works really well, but it's just getting really creative and giving people these free trials and things like that actually gets them going. Or honestly, just getting super creative.
Yeah, Dale, if I'm saying his last name, Dale Dupree is big on this. He has his own community, and he like got his foot in the front door selling copy machines and printing machines, and he's super creative. I love his like posts about the same type of thing, like sending a thing of donuts or a handwritten ripped up letter, and like just to grab attention. I think it would work a lot more in enterprise or like bigger accounts. But very creative stuff. I've always gotten a kick out of his true stories too, with photos and everything to break.
I used to hate Dale. I used to see his content all the time, and I was like, this guy's a moron. I used to think that to myself. And then I started testing his stuff out. It's like, I'm totally wrong. I sent that. He was the one who inspired me to send out 50 or 60 handwritten letters, however many it was. And dude, I wrote so many handwritten letters, and each of them were like, it wasn't just like a pitch. It was like, this is exactly how Phone Burner can help you. This is when I was at Phone Burner. The feedback I got on that was insane. There were people taking screenshots of my letter, tagging me in it on LinkedIn, and we got meetings with them, which was pretty cool. Like,
crumpled letter thing, that's hilarious. It's just little things like that that's really funny.
But this is the kind of stuff that separates you from every other NPC out there. You become a main character instead. That it's a rule of thumb to live by, especially as we keep seeing more SDRs get canned every week. Like, well, what did I do wrong? I followed 30 NPC's 5-step cold calling guide. Who gives a fuck? Honestly, this shit is, you're saying the same shit the last 25 people said who called. That's the problem. And that's why you're not booking any meetings. You're not closing any deals. You're exactly like the last 25 guys. That's a problem with frameworks.
Also, that's just a problem with some companies in general is they just have such a difficult time differentiating what they do, especially on managed services or IT services, right? They all relatively do the same thing. So how do you differentiate yourself and really bringing that to a company's focus with their marketing team? It's almost an exercise in futility sometimes.
Yeah, the first legitimate cold calling job I had was a company in Philly called Market Resource Partners, which was like an awesome company at the time. But it was quite literally as Wolf of Wall Street as you could possibly imagine. That was the entire theme there. And it was a big company too. It was in the 37th floor, which was the top floor of this giant building in the middle of Philly. And it was just a huge office where everybody was crammed into next to each other, cold calling like crazy. But then all the CEO or the C-level folks and VPs had these massive offices. And it was like, you felt like you were an animal in a cage. But I had this one director who just absolutely hated my gut for some reason. So I was like, I started with 9 other guys, and we were all on the same team together. Half of them quit in the first 15 days because they were like, man, Chris is way too fucking hard. He's a jerk. I don't want to work with him anymore. And he was like, you follow my script to the T. And I think I think I still remember it, even though it was like years ago. It was like, hey, this is James. I'm calling from Cisco on behalf of Market Resource Partners. My job is to get you connected with all the technology you'll need for insert year. This year, will you be looking at communication technology, collaboration technology, data servers, or some other shit like that, whatever it was. And every time people would hang up on me. And he used to go, just trust me. And eventually I was like, man, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Like, I hear what the pros are doing here. They're not doing that. So I switched it up and I started doing my own thing, creating my own pitches, which were all really unique and really personalized to my prospects. And like, I'm keeping people on the phone. And he's getting really pissed off about it, but I'm still doing it because I'm making good money in commission, right? And then the CEO of the company, who is this guy James at the time, he was a cold dude. I mean, he was like really cool, but he'd come in every day like in these slick suits, and he would just be like eating a mango in his office, like like the richest. Like, he looked just so rich. And we're doing a big Zoom call together, and he's like, all right, James, I'm gonna have you pitch us now. You hit us with your pitch, go. And I start pitching him the same way I pitch a prospect over the phone. And Chris stops him in between. He's like, James, you're not listening to my script. What's the matter with you? And he's screaming at me in the middle. And I'll never forget this. James looks over at him and he goes, Chris, shut up. Just like that. And Chris's face got beet red, man. He was so upset. And he was so mad. He talked to me after that. He was pretty pissed. But the CEO loved my pitch. He said, this is what we need more of. And so I'm going on a tangent here, but to the point, this is the problem. Everybody's doing the same shit. Everybody's following the same formulas and the same bullshit, and it doesn't work after the 100th time.
Yeah, and this is something I tell reps too, is like a script is a framework. It's just there so you have it as like your crutch, essentially. But you need to develop your own voice. I can't be your voice. Like, how I pitch to somebody is not how you're going to pitch to somebody. I can't expect you to be myself. Now, there's certain frameworks you can take from me, but ultimately you have to find your own rhythm and your own groove. And I know a lot of organizations, like you just talked about, get so hung up on the fucking script. You got to follow this. You got to say this. And it's just not how conversation or human interactions work. And you have to give people the ability to just talk. And then it just increases the authenticity too of when you're on a call. It just sounds more natural and not like a robot just going down the list.
One thing I add to that too is it's different when you're working within one company and like someone's able to prove out something that works. When companies come to us as Level Up, it's just we're getting every single type of company you could think of. And it's not proven. In many cases, they've never done cold calling. You're actually constantly testing and tweaking. It's not like there is no proven script to work off of. You're kind of, we have some frameworks that we go off of, but it's like, it's all constantly evolving. And so, yeah, I just don't think you can necessarily stick to that, especially in our position. And then I also want to touch on a lot of these companies that really aren't differentiating themselves in any way, and it's easy to tell by going to their website. But then they come to the lead gen company looking to work some magic, but it's like after you assess this and you realize there's like very little case studies and the website looks like it was done from somebody just graduating high school, you can almost start to filter out like what's going to work and what's not. It's like you have to, like, it's a breath of fresh air when we bring on a company that's like a leader in the space, or they just like look professional. It's going to make your job so much easier.
Yeah, that's when I was running my outbound agency. That was like the thing is I'd work with some random ass company in, I don't know, fucking India or somewhere, and it would be like a payments company, the 100th payment, and you're cold calling. You're like, hey, do you want to work with this payment company? Trying to like get them on, like explaining the use case, and they're like, I never heard of you guys. Like, where are you based? Are you calling people in the U.S., India? Okay, we're good. Bye. You know what I mean? And then you go on their website, and it looks like some shitty copy of Stripe's website. Like, all right, this is the problem. So like the biggest mistake, and even with doing inbound work, it's really the same thing that applies. If you're writing for somebody who's like literally a nobody and has no original thought, it's very difficult to get any traction from the audience. That's a really difficult thing to do because you still want it to be their words. It's so easy to work with people who have some kind of established, hey, we already have an outbound motion. I know an outbound agency that works with ZoomInfo. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it or not, so I'm not, but they were like 80% of our revenue comes from ZoomInfo. You're selling through ZoomInfo. It's a very easy thing to do. You know what I mean? And I'm not downplaying ZoomInfo. They have an amazing product, but that's why it's so easy. But imagine if you were selling for some data provider who looks super scammy. You're not going to get the same results at all.
Even if it looks okay, in this scenario of a data provider, I could think of 10 to 15 off the top of my head. And so if you have this brand new one with no brand recognition, it's like, how's that going to work? It's just it's an uphill battle. Doesn't mean it can't work, but it's going to be a long journey.
Yeah, and that's why too. That's the problem with outbound agencies is you work with these no-name companies, and they expect amazing clients to just sign up for their product because you got a meeting with them. An outbound meeting is not the same as an inbound meeting, especially when you're early on. When you get a meeting, and I've heard this from all the outbound agency guys I know, but as soon as you book a meeting for someone and they get that meeting, they need to be working that deal. Like they need to do some magic to convert that deal. How exactly can we do? And for some people, it's giving away free shit again. We're sending a letter in the mail. Hey, thanks for taking the demo call with us. Some kind of stuff. But I read something the other day. Oh boy, I forget who the power dialer was. But it's for a power dialer. And they after they sign you up and get you on a free trial, they say, okay, now for every rep that actually makes a call, we're going to send $50, a $50 gift card to you. Not for every call, but like for every rep that actually goes on a call. Yeah, and it's now you're incentivized to actually pick up and call. And for being a phone burner, like, I signed an NDA, so I can't talk about this stuff too much, but there's nothing bad about this. One of the biggest problems is like you get somebody on a demo or you get somebody on a free trial, actually getting them to sit down and use the product and really actually use it is hard because there's a learning curve. And so it's those little creative things that just make the biggest difference.
That's one thing we also noticed too when you said about when you give a lead over to a company and then they need to work it and actually nurture it and close it, is a lot of these organizations, they just don't do that. They just expect, okay, we have the first or second meeting and then that's it. If they don't convert, okay, that's just not going to work. We're on to the next one. And something with what we do internally, probably the reason why we were so successful, is I know me and John will follow up 10, 20 times. We will just keep following up until you specifically say no, get lost, right? But it leads to conversions. Yeah, it leads to way higher conversions. But a lot of people, they just want those instant wins. They think it's like you're going to run advertisement and everybody's going to come in and just check out, right? That's just not how it works.
The reason we know this is some of our clients have told us what happens after a meeting is set for them. They have the meeting and sometimes they'll send one follow-up email and nothing else happens. And they're like, yeah, we know it's an internal issue, but it's like, how are you not addressing that? How are the reps not like hungry to follow up? It's just like, I don't know, it's a bummer, but like we notice a lot of the sales process just falls off. It seems like, to Chris's point, is like, I will follow up if they've expressed interest and told me things like, hey, this is my pain point. This is what I'm looking to implement. And this is after the demo. I'm not going to follow up with someone's like that many times if I've never talked to them or they ghost me and we haven't spoken yet. But if you said, I'm interested and you had a call with me, I will follow up by multiple channels and get creative, not overdoing it, but like respectfully following up, because until you say no, you already told me you're interested. I'm not doing a good job, and I'm doing myself and my company a disservice by not following up.
Yeah, and a good example to this too is before we even started shooting here is I had a call with a relatively big healthcare company, and I've been talking to them going on 6 months now, and now they're at the stage of ready to convert. And so if I would have just dropped it because, the third conversation we had didn't go anywhere, then we just lost a pretty decent chunk of revenue.
Yeah. So I'm stoked because we actually just won the biggest name client we've ever had. This was maybe like a month ago. I was super stoked about it. I kid you not, it took 4 months of trying to get a meeting. Not trying to close, but actually trying to get a meeting. And this is like the idea of really being locked into an account, trying to close it. You're trying to find all those openings. This is the entire process. To my memory, this is the entire process. It's a software company in the sales space. It's a clay competitor, right? That's like where we're at. And they are just like completely not active on socials at all. But I love their tool. I use it every day. So I'm like, all right, how do I get a hold of this account? I reach out to the CEO. CEO doesn't pick up. I'm like, all right, let me make a goofy ass Photoshop like I did for you. And so I turned him into, because he's a superhero fan, I turned him into a superhero, and it's his Electrifier SDRs with the company name at the bottom, and it's a badass Photoshop. It looks like a comic book cover, and still nothing. I'm like, oh, that took me like 2 hours to put that together. So what do I do now? I'm like, head of growth, let me talk to him. Head of growth ignores me. I'm like, all right, let me work lower. I talk to the lowest person at the company, which is like one of their sales reps. Sales rep gives me a bunch of intel, tells me who to reach out to, turns out to be the head of growth. I get an introduction to the head of growth and ignores me. I go back to the sales rep. I actually got fired. I'm like,
this is how it goes in many cases. That's how like hard you need to work.
So then I'm like, all right, what do I do now? So I'm like, all right, let me think about it. Okay. I grab a piece of paper and I literally sketched the company logo with a marker and I color it in like a 5-year-old. And then on the other side, I wrote, I love you, right? So it says, I love you. And then I flip the card over and it has their company logo on it. And I sent him a GIF of it. Nothing still. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, this is just not going to work. And then I'm like thinking, how do I do this? They have a new hire. They have a new VP of revenue. And I'm like, here we go. This is what I need to do. I just sent him a connection invite and I'm like, hey, I love your tool. And he's like, hey, that's really good to hear. I'm trying to get customer feedback. He's like, can you hop on a call with me for 15 minutes? We hop on a call the next day. I talked to him, and at the end of the call, I'm like, hey, I want to be real with you. I've been trying to work your account for 3 months at this point. I really want to work with you guys. I'll do something for free for you guys. And he said, we're not ready yet. I'm like, all right. I grab his phone number. We become good friends. I have him on my Twitter space session, which is like a live podcast. And we just keep going and going. And then I keep reminding him, I want to do a free pilot. I want to do a free pilot. I'll do a free one for you. Eventually he goes, all right, I got a CEO to say yes. The free pilot absolutely fucking exploded. The CEO got 3,400 likes on one of the posts. And then all of his other stuff blew up too, just like that. Not that big, but a couple hundred in every post. And they were like, all right, let's do this. It was my first annual contract that we got from the company.
Nice.
And so, yeah, and so 4 months of hard work. But most people aren't going to do that. That's why I'm like, most people, they call an account, they email an account, then they forget it. And it's like, even if you're not in the outbound type of business, I'm not in an outbound business, I still do a lot of outbound because you have to. If you want to actually get if you want to get the accounts that you want, you have to do some outbound. That's just how it is.
All right, James, I think this is a great point to end the conversation. I really liked this. It was great to dive in and like hear how you got to where you are today, but also be real, what it takes to be scrappy and get leads and work accounts. And I think a lot of people think it's just like, yeah, you make a phone call, you send an email, and it just works. But no, it's most companies are having to hunt to make these new sales and work them for, like Chris said, that recent one with the healthcare company for months. Thanks for coming on. How can people find you?
My LinkedIn. So my I need to change my handle on Twitter because it's not really applicable anymore. But my handle is Hyper Salesman. I got to change it to Hyper Marketer or some shit now, which doesn't sound as cool. If you want to look me up on LinkedIn, I'll read you. It's James. It's a really complicated last name. Forget I even said this. Just type in the Mike Tyson of ghostwriting. I'm going to be the first thing to pop up there. And fuck it, you can call me too. My number is 484-919-4428.
All right, well, let's turn that
link
over
to
SDRs.
We'll link to your Twitter and your LinkedIn page too. Because it's a Hanzimanolis.
That's so
I said
tough,
it right.
Yeah, close. Yeah, Hanzimanolis. You're close. You got it. Just pronunciation is off.
That Greek last name.
It's Greek as it gets, man.
All right, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.